Thank you for joining us for our ARC video series where we sit down with some of our seasoned financial professionals and talk about topics for advisors that are looking to go independent. Today we have Chad Atkins. He is one of the founding members of Advisor Resource Council. He also has the fancy title of Chief Officer of Business Acquisitions. And in the earlier days of ARC, you were the primary recruiter for the firm as well.
Absolutely.
So tell us, you also run your own book of business. Can you tell us a little bit about your book and how you run that?
So we have our own practice, obviously. It's called 360 Wealth Management Partners. It's a little 5-man team with my brother running the firm, and then we have a couple juniors and a full-time assistant. So that's probably where I spend a lot of my time. But the Chief Director of Acquisitions for ARC is my other role. Not too different than the recruiting role that I had early in the career, but now it's kind of more morphed into what I've done to build my practices, which is buying practices. So I bought 7 books myself for my team, and then I've helped ARC do 6 books for the joint venture that we have there. So something that I guess through trial and error I've done more than anybody else, and therefore I get to do it to help advisors that say they want to do that as well. Some advisors say, yes, I'd love to buy books, and others say, no, I'm just going to keep growing the way I've always grown. And at ARC, we don't care. Whatever's best for you is best for us, but if you raise your hand, we'll come running.
Yeah, absolutely. So we will probably have another conversation in the near future about business acquisitions, but today we're going to focus a little bit more specifically on payouts. So one of the big reasons to go independent, obviously, is the potential for a higher payout. So first question for you would be just, can you kind of give us a layout of how payouts are configured in the independent space?
I'm actually glad you said it that way because everybody acts like payouts are just easy. You know, I'm at a 88% payout, which means 88%. And if you've ever actually looked at the paycheck, it is always different than what you think it is. Every firm that I've looked at, and as an ex-wholesaler, there were a lot of different firms. All of them seem to have 2 key components. I mean, one is the payout percentage, the number, which you think is clear, but it's not always. And then the second part is more the platform fees that can go depending on how you're managing your money or how you're doing your business. And a lot of advisors that I found understand both when they move firms, but then they seem to forget about the platform fee down the road because the blatant one in your face that really our industry has always talked about is the payout percentage. So really there's 2 main parts of that.
So my question on that, what's the difference? How are those calculated?
The platform fee that is really not very transparent at most firms, of course we've tried to make that very transparent. The platform fee always comes off first. So let's say you have $100 million of assets, they're going to take 10 basis points of that asset management will end up coming out. Mostly that is on a monthly basis if you're doing advisory. And then whatever's left over is what your payout percentage goes from. But even that payout percentage, 88% that I mentioned before, that can be a little misleading because is that starting at 90%? Is that starting at 100%? Again, for transparency purposes, I think we've done a better job of saying if it's 92, that's starting at 100. If it's 82 or 88, it's starting at 100. But even that percentage being the secondary, if you're starting at $1,000, but that platform fee ends up taking $100, and I said that was coming off the top, you have $900 that you're now getting 90% of. So call it $810. Most people think, oh, I should be getting $900. They're forgetting the platform fee again.
Yeah.
And we've had advisors that have been with us, 5 or 10 years. Just like the industry, they forget about it down the road. Our guys sometimes forget about it as well. Because of our transparency, we put it on their payroll report to make it very kind of nice when you can go back and see column number 1, column number 2. There's the transparency.
Absolutely. So if you were to look at a payroll report from ARC, it would have the columns of the AUM, obviously, any admin fees you're paying, which is the platform fee. If you're using internal money management, there's a line item for that, your payout, and then we even tell you the exact dollar amount you're paying to ARC for our supervision and operation services.
Everything's there, and if you're splitting it with another person on your team, it even has that split out. Yeah. So again, just as transparent and no-brainer as we felt like we could get it.
Perfect. So obviously we have those two levers that are a big component of payout, but there's also the piece of expenses that can really move how much an advisor is taking home. When you're looking, if you were sitting here today and you were about to look at moving your book somewhere, what expenses would you be really asking questions about?
I'm glad you said that because, again, advisors think payout, the percentage, is the only thing that matters. I think we've dispelled that and said, no, admin can make a big difference as well. The other expenses are things that people don't think about either. I mean, do you have an assistant that you're paying for on your own? Or are you using some virtual assistant that maybe that platform has for you? You need to figure in those costs. Are you going to have an office, or are you going to work out of your house? What is the E&O insurance and the things that the firms charge? There are lots of other expenses that people need to figure in. I mean, is there some kind of money management software or financial planning software that you need to use? But all those little things need to go in because, at least at ARC, we're getting discounts on a few of those to make it a little better, like on CRM, your contact management and stuff. That might help make a difference. Other fees, if you're using something that we haven't used, well, you're going to pay full boat for that because you chose to use it. We don't know anything about it. But we also have drawn and tried to, with vendors, get a discount for the rest of the network if it's a program that is really good. But again, all those things come into what is your true net. And again, advisors should know that, but if they came from a wirehouse or a W-2 type environment, a lot of those things are thrown in. Mm-hmm. Now, at the top payouts, 42%, I'm not sure 58% of your paycheck is going to wrap up all those different expenses. I think they're overcharging at those W-2 places. But again, come and do the math. If your assistant's, 75 grand and these things cost 50 grand and all in you're 150 and you're making $1 million, that to me is an 85% payout plus whatever your payout here would be. It's really hard for me ever to mathematically find how they think 42% is a really honest deal for any of these guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that kind of sums up all of our questions about payouts. Obviously, if somebody was interested in joining ARC and doing an analysis, we would happily look at what they're currently paying now and what it would look like on our platform. Anything else that you think we should discuss in regards to payouts?
As what you just said, I think it's kind of neat to have a spreadsheet. If you'll tell us what all you're paying there and what your expenses are, we can see what you might need here, what those expenses would be, and literally put it down mathematically. And that's where literally, again, with those W-2 people, if we can't double your paycheck from a W-2 type place, I'd kind of be surprised. Or it just means you're a mega large producer and you're still going to make more, but maybe not double. But most of the ones I've seen, it's double, if not more, from that W-2 model. But yes, I think everything you've asked are the right questions to ask. Any advisor that's going and doing this at other firms, make that list. Make sure you go in with your eyes wide open because once you move, it's really hard to unmove or move somewhere else. Your clients won't appreciate that. Yep. It should be one big move because you did all your research, and then everybody should be happy going forward, both clients and the advisor.
So let's talk about one other piece that can really be a factor when making a decision to move, and that's transition assistance. So how does that factor into a payout?
Really, it's an upfront check that people get for bringing their assets under management over to the new firm. So whether it's a independent firm or a W-2 model firm that I already mentioned, or even just a straight RIA type firm, all of those transition assistants are a little different. So the W-2 model, I would say I've seen 150 to 250 of whatever that 12-month rolling gross is. So if you're making $1 million, it might be a gross T12 revenue. It might be $1.5 million or even $2.5 million. But those W-2 models own you for 7 to 9 years. The only time I've ever seen it 2.5% is they owned them for 9 to 11 years. The 1.5, I think, was a 7-year type contract. So instead of getting a 90% payout, you're getting a 40% payout. That 50% is basically financing your upfront check. Mm-hmm. So use that $1 million example, $500,000 a year they're keeping out of your pay because they gave you that $1.5 million up front. So if you can do simple math, that's about 3 years that you pay yourself back. You would have been better off getting a higher payout than the upfront check. Now, trickle that down. If you went to an independent that was corporate, where they get to take their platform fees and they get to take their haircuts, they're making the money, then you're probably going to start at 80, 85, 90%, depending on how large you are. Let's even say 90% because of the $1 million production number that I quoted a minute ago. And it can go a little higher, even if that's retroactive. You have to work your way up to it by the end of the year. January 1st, you start at 90 again. But the same thing on corporate platforms, you're probably seeing maybe 40 to 50 basis points of TA, transition assistance up front. Mm-hmm. So they're going to write a $400,000 or $500,000 check. Now they have a 2-year forgive clause that they're going to roll that out over 2 years, and you would have to pay taxes and pay some money back if you left before then. But again, this should be a once in a lifetime move, or maybe it's an every 20-year move, but you're not going to be doing this every year or two. Now on that $500,000, if it was 50 basis points on the $1 million AUM, at a 90% payout, I mean, wow, that's pretty good money. That's just an extra little check in the bank. Now, the 10% and the platform fees, where I said it goes down to 85 or 80, that $200,000 a year is how they would pay back that $500,000. Same 2 to 3 year break even as it would be on that 9-year contract. So 2-year contract, 2 to 3 year break even, just like the W-2 model, but at least under the corporate model, they don't own you for a long period of time. If you wanted to leave, you can. Your payout stays high. In that W-2 model, you would kind of expect that 40 to go back up to a reasonable number, but the W-2 models feel like their name recognition and them giving you a desk and them letting you share an assistant with 4 other advisors, that makes up for the 60% of your paycheck that they keep. Again, I wish people could do math and do their own budgeting and say, my assistant costs this, my office costs this, my software costs this, my E&O costs this. It's going to be far less than that $600,000 I was just quoting. Let me go ahead and cover the third one, the RIA model, registered investment advisor, independent. Those payouts typically start at a higher level, so they can also share that with their advisors at a higher level. Mm-hmm. So at that $1 million level, we've seen people at a 95% payout and maybe 2 or 3 basis points or maybe even 0. But even at a 95% payout with 5 basis points, which would be pretty high for a $1 million producer, that really means you're netting around a 90% payout. Now that transition assistance, instead of $500,000, might be $250,000. But again, at a 90% net payout versus the other example I gave you on a corporate platform would be 80, that 10% difference, call that $100,000 a year, you got a $500,000 check to get the lower payout, you got a $250,000 to get the highest payout you can, that's a 2.5 year break even. And again, the RIA nor the corporate own you for the next 7 to 9 years like they would under that W-2 model.
Yeah. And that's what makes due diligence so important. Ask all the questions, know about all the different ways you can leverage your payout and your transition assistance to find what works best for your practice.
And I'd even sadly say people have used us as a consultant to help them make sure they don't miss some of these things, even if they ended up going somewhere else. At least we were able to be educated over that process. So if there's something we can do to help out to make sure you don't miss something, we'd be more than happy to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Independence is freedom.
Independence is freedom.
Yeah. All right, Chad. Well, thanks for taking the time today.
Thank you, Sarah.
If you found value in today's content, please make sure to subscribe to our channel for more videos like this in the future. Thank you.